Yeah, I already did the Dark Souls 2 bosses, Amadeo, actually, on YouTube. So that is already there. So what we are going to do now is the Dark Souls 3 boss tier list. Just to reiterate, I am going to be basing this tier list not on who I choose to be the most difficult, or decide is most difficult, but who is challenging, who is fair and balanced, who is cool looking, whose arena is cool looking and fair and balanced, and just about everything about them trickling down into my preferences. Oblivion Knight, welcome in! And thank you also, Amadeo, for coming. Applause for the VIPs in Charles Chill Channel. Alright, so next up is Dark Souls 3's bosses. I kind of want to do the first bosses first, you know? That's what I want to do. So, Iudex Gundyr. Not Champion Gundyr, mind you. Iudex Gundyr, the first boss you face after waking up. He's a good one. I gotta say, he is very low health. And he is slower than his other self, and his second phase he is much slower than usual, but he is extremely fast for a first boss. Definitely not to be taken lightly. Very enjoyable, and it's very fun to beat him first try after having died to him many times. I did beat him my first try in my first playthrough, however, which was surprising, and I have never, well, I didn't do that for a long time since. But if you have a good high damage first character, like, well, certain ones, anything that starts out with an axe or a sword is probably best to fight him. Low damage, like Herald, is going to have difficulty with him. But he's cool. His armor is awesome. Reminds me of Kingdom of Heaven, as well as the king in Demon Souls that you fight for Soul Brent. Really cool. Really cool boss. Giant Halberd, or glaive, if you will. Turns into a giant pus monster afterward, which is insane. Like, this is the most, like, overproduced, craziest first bosses of any of the Souls games. Like, why is it so crazy? Why is it so hard? Why is it so epic? It's nuts. So I'd say it's in A, honestly. Best first boss, but also most difficult first boss, in my opinion. Who is the next boss you face? Oh yes, Boreal Valley Vort. He also goes in A, because that music, man. It's so good, and he just charges at you relentlessly, but he does actually have a very small moveset. But man, another super fast boss that I think is actually easier than Iudex Gundyr. But he is a fair boss. You do fight him in a wide open space. Iudex Gundyr, you can fall off one side of the map, which is stupid, but I think the boss's mechanics and complexity actually makes up for it. He's also balanced to be less damaging, but is still more fun and challenging to fight than Vort. But Vort does high damage and frost damage, so he's really cool. I like him. An A as well. I think Dark Souls 3 bosses are all very well designed, mostly. JBVT, are you planning on doing a DS2 tier list? I already did, and it is on YouTube if you check out my YouTube channel using the !YouTube command, and then you have to search for it. But it is there. It is there. I think I still stand by it. So who was next after that? After that, you can choose one of two bosses. I think the next one is the tree. The Curse-Rotted Greatwood. I hate this boss. I hate it. I hate it. A loathful passion. I think it might be one of the worst bosses in the game. It's an epic arena that then devolves into a less epic, dark arena, but then in second phase, the arena, like, changes. So that's pretty cool. You fall through the floor. I like that one. I like that one a lot. I like the fact that you fall through the floor, but I hate the range he can hit you from. I hate the fact that he drops down vile fruit on your head that you can't see where it's coming from. until it hits you. I also hate that it's very difficult to hit some of his egg sacs with certain weapons, and that if you don't do high damage and have a long weapon, then you are just going to have a horrible time. It's really not a well-made boss, but it is optional, and it does give you the ability to get boss weapons. So you kind of have to do it if you want the boss weapons, but you don't have to do it if you don't. So that's kind of nice. It also gives you access to another bonfire, which you can use to get to a shield, which is really nice early game. That I like, the War God shield. But yeah, I don't like him in general. It's very unfair, I feel. If you over-level, of course, and come back later, he's much easier, but still, he does have very high damage and very high health. And the second phase, you're basically attacking a hitbox, a moving arm, and that's the best way to damage him, but damaging him puts you in harm's way. So if you're not using a ranged build, you're in trouble. It's very imbalanced. Alright, next is... well, this is Champion Gundyr. Put your tier list together in a better way. Man? What is this? There's definitely some fan art going on that I'm not a fan of. I want game visuals. I asked the Deacons of the Deep. Also, this is the next boss, probably. Crystal Sage. Right? Maybe? Oh, there's also the dragon, the demon. But I don't think he's on here. Huh. He is a mini-boss, so I get that. But, you know, Crystal Sage I do like a lot better than Bed of Chaos. I also like his giant hat, and crystal magics are really cool. But he's very much the pinwheel of the game, in a lot of ways. I'll actually put Bed of Chaos down there. He's very easy. He's a damage check, though, so if you do good damage, you will not have any issue with Crystal Sage. He also pops up in multiple places, and you have to run after him and kill all the other ones in order to make sure they're not attacking you. That's the best way to do it, I've found. Unless you just have such high damage that you can just burst down the real one until he dies, which is also something you can do. But not difficult, and not very interesting. Just Pinwheel over again. That's better tuned than Pinwheel. Low health, but high damage. Well, not high, but good damage for when you fight him. Overall respectable, and I like his design a lot, probably my favorite boss design in the game. But nothing to write home about, you know? Alright. Deacons of the Deep is next. I like Deacons of the Deep. I do. I don't think they're a very good boss fight, but I think it's a really cool arena. Giant, massive arena with a massive rectangular tomb in the middle. And probably about 30 deacons all attacking you, all that respawn infinitely. And you have to kill the one who has the fire above his head, the tongue of fire above his head, which is probably another religious reference that I did not catch on to until just now. But once you kill it, then the fire goes to someone else, and then you have to kill them, and then the Pope comes up, and you have to kill them as well. And they're shooting dark magic at you constantly. And if you let them, they will turn the whole room into a dark room that will sap your health continually until you are dead. Which is something that most people don't realize, because usually the boss goes down too fast for you to realize that. Like, you are fighting against the clock in this boss fight. And he has a lot of mechanics that are not very easy to see or bring out unless you don't do well, in which case you'll probably die. But I like it. I like slamming through these massive hordes of deacons to get to the Pope. It's very fun, and very different from all the other bosses. A better spectacle boss fight than most, I would say. But still B. Still B. Alright, next is... who? Oh yes, the Abyss Watchers. That's right. This one goes either in A or S. I think it goes in S for now. We'll see. But Abyss Watchers are so cool. They're super fast. They can get stun locked, they can get parried, and they can get backstabbed. But good luck doing any of that because they just run around the room. And they constantly attack each other, at least in their first phase. But once the first phase is over, I think 3 or 4 of them, no, I think 3 of them spawn fighting each other. They can also all fight you, if you're not careful. But once you get to the second phase, they all, the blood all congeals into one of them, and then they have fire damage and range attacks, very similar to Maria from Bloodborne. So yeah, Maria from Bloodborne was a great fight, and Abyss Watchers is basically just Maria, but Dark Souls-y. So, very, very fun. Very fair. Usually, most people go in for the Abyss Watcher fight way too underleveled, and they don't realize they can do other things. But if you do go into them later on, you will win. You just will. And such good music. Like, some of the best in the series is in Dark Souls 3. I would recommend. Applause for the Abyss Watchers for making it into S. Alrighty then. You can get to Yorm next, so we'll go ahead and... Well, no, you have to fight this boy first. Yes, yes. The, what's his name? Oh boy. Skeleton King. I forget his name, chat. What's his name? High Lord Wolnir. It just came to me. Huzzah. Again, another spectacle boss fight that is very short. Either you die or he dies. Period. It is difficult just because he keeps crawling out of the abyss and bringing the abyss with him, so if you go beyond him, you just fall off of the map. Also, he pukes darkness, which can kill you, if you don't run away from it. There's a lot of running away from Wolnir, but you have to destroy the bracelets on his arms to kill him. There are only 3 bracelets, and they all have the same health bar, so if you have a really high damage weapon, or a really large weapon that does stagger damage, you'll break those things really quickly, so fast you probably won't even get hit. But if you don't, then you'll probably have to deal with his puke. He pulls out a sword out of the ground, a holy sword, and does holy damage against you. Very difficult to get away from, as well as a bunch of mobs of skeletons that respawn infinitely start spawning, and that's difficult to deal with, on top of all the other things he usually does. So it's actually really hard if you don't have high damage and other skill, not only skill check, but also damage check. Not a lot of these bosses require you to have a ton of health, at least in the early game. It changes after this, though. Dreadfully so. You also have to get through a pretty difficult place of the Catacombs of Karthus to get to him, and I don't find him as difficult as the area you have to fight through. But I do think he looks super cool, and when you kill him, he falls back into the darkness. In fact, you go into a pocket dimension after touching the goblet that he is trapped in, which is always interesting. So I like him, he's an A for me. I love spectacle bosses. They are not always as well done as this, though. Alright, next up, Yorm the Giant. Yorm the Giant, sadly, is a really bad fight, because it is the Praetor Rykard. Say that 5 times fast. Praetor Rykard. But, so you have to get the sword that exists in his boss room, have to go past him in order to get it, and once you get it, and charge it up, and attack him, he dies in like, what, 8 hits, and that's it? And you can stun lock him? So it's really silly, really boring, really easy. If you don't do that, it takes like hours to beat him with high damage. Also thank you, Jibby VT, for the hydration. Thanks a lot. Alright, continuing on. Maybe High Lord Wolnir is too high on this list, but he is High Lord Wolnir. Alright, next up is Pontiff Knight Sullivan. Yes. This is an S tier boss, I gotta say. He's super fast, he has Gwyn's abilities, also dark abilities and magic abilities. He has a duplicate phase that is like Pinwheel. And he doesn't have a whole lot of health. He doesn't have a whole lot of health. You can parry him, it's very difficult. You cannot backstab him. But I do find it to be fair, but also incredibly challenging. Incredibly challenging. I don't know whether he is better than the Abyss Watchers or not. Actually, they're very similar to each other. Abyss Watchers and Pontiff Sullivan. They both have fire attacks, although they're kind of mirrored. Abyss Watcher has multiples of himself in the first phase. Pontiff Sullivan has a duplicate of himself in the second phase. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. But yeah, he's just a cool prince, a cool king. He's a cool guy. I like him a lot. I wish you could get his armor. He also has a really weird, like, Amygdallan head. Like, face. He has this network, this silver network over his face, which looks really weird. I think he's really impressive, design-wise. And he has a cross-shaped boss arena, which actually does work against you, because you have a little bit of elevation that can change the angle of your attacks. You also have some angles of the room that jut out that you can get caught on, as well as chairs and pews that you have to roll through or break. So it's not very easy to move around in the boss arena, but at least it's big and open, and I think that's very nice. Very fair. Good design. So then, who's next? Who is this? I can't even see. Oh, I know who that is. I know who that is. Yeah. We'll get to him. So at this point, we're getting into the end game already. There aren't that many bosses in this game, are there? Next up is Aldrich of the Deep. At least I'm just saying that there is. He's next. He's not an S. Not at all, but I do think he's better than Boreal Valley Vort. But it's just one of those bosses where, like I like the visuals, it's an interesting boss. But I feel like he wasn't originally supposed to be in the area that he's in. Like, you should have fought him elsewhere. But he is a Gwyndolin. Not Gwyndolin. Yeah. He is Gwyndolin. He took Gwyndolin's corpse over, and is using his corpse as a puppet to shoot magic with, which is terrifying and weird. His main body is the poop and the floor that you're walking on. And so he can go down into the floor and come up at will, which is really annoying, and causes you to have to wait and run after him and run away from him all the time. Like, whenever he does his rain of arrows attack, you just have to run away until it's over. Meanwhile, he can still shoot you from across the room using, like, Comet or whatever, and it's really annoying. I hate him. He's awful. But if you have good fire damage, good magic damage, good frost damage, elemental damage melts him. So if you run up behind him and just spam attacks, and then run away from his big fire or big magic attacks, you'll be fine. He has the same damage dealing, like, elements as Pontiff, which is weird. Like, a lot of these bosses have the same abilities, or at least the same elements that you're dealing with. But they're also weak to those elements, which is very strange. So I feel like Aldrich, he's not a fun boss to fight. He has good music, of course. And you fight him in Anor Londo, which is a big reveal. But, yeah, I'm not a fan of him. But is he better than Boreal Valley Vort? He does have more mechanics, that's for sure. He doesn't charge at you, he charges away from you, though. So there is that. Yeah, I think he deserves to be there. That's fine. A is fine. Is it fine? He's a caster. I do think he's better than the Deacons of the Deep. Yeah, Alright. It took me a while. But, alright, next up is... Who is next, actually? Well, you can go down to the Demon King. Fire Demon King. And he is a straight-up boss. Know what I mean? He's one of those bosses that's just like, this is Asylum Demon, but with way more attacks and way more character. They added a lot of animations to him, and there are 3 piles of corpses that you can run around, either to get away from his attacks, or that hinder you from attacking him. He also has a really annoying asteroid attack, really annoying, like, ring of fire attack that comes away from him and then comes back to him, so you have to roll backward and forward. Like, the bosses in Dark Souls 3 are very complex compared to any of the previous bosses in Dark Souls 1 or 2 or even Bloodborne. So it's really exhausting to fight this guy, especially. But he does have low health, but he does insane fire damage, like absolutely incredible. If you have the most fire damage resistance the game offers, you will still probably get 2 or 3 shot by him if you get hit by anything. Probably 2 shot at the very least, or at the very most, I should say. So it's very difficult just because of the damage numbers he deals. But I also like the arena. You're in a burning ash lake with piles of demon corpses, and he has these massive antlers and a beard. He's very much another Asylum Demon, but he's so different. They've added so many different mechanics and like little details. He also has a very similar thing going on with Sif. As Sif, once you get him down to like, what, 15% health, he then explodes, and he is no longer able to do fire damage, and he can no longer move. So he can only swing at you, or do a tail attack at you, but he's basically harmless at that point. I have died to him though, and that was humiliating in that time. So, very fascinating boss. I wouldn't put him among the best, but he is very high on the list, for good reason. Alright, next I think it makes a lot of sense that we go forth to... Who is this? What is that? What is that, friends? Oh! 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 Yeah, this makes sense. Next up is... the Dancer of the Boreal Valley. My absolute favorite boss of the game. The coolest boss. The one with the most interesting moveset. Really cool just to watch her do her thing. But also, really fun to learn. And to dodge. And to attack. Because it's like you have to be involved in the beat of her dance. Or else you will die. You have to dodge to the time, or else she will combo you to death. It's just really fun, man. It's just really fun. There's a big, wide-open cathedral that you're fighting in. There are pillars to hide behind. And she has some, like, the timing of her attacks are, like, super fast and big combos. But once she's done with those combos, she will just traipse around the room, looking at you, like a tiger looks at its prey. And you can just run in and hit her during that time. It's very fair and balanced, but most people are, like, afraid to run in and hit her. They don't realize that she doesn't react to your attacks, so you can just run in and smack her until she starts doing her next move. She also buffs herself in the second phase with dark damage. She does fire damage and magic damage. So it's a really cool looking fight, good arena, good music. And you get some awesome armor out of it from her as well if you beat her. So, I have yet to do a Dancer of the Boreal Valley playthrough. I look forward to doing it. You can get her blades as well. But my favorite boss in the game, hands down, by far, Not the most difficult boss, by a long shot, but that's probably why. I don't like super difficult bosses. Next up, there are many bosses we can do next, but I think we'll go first with Champion Gundyr, shall we? And he's tough. He is tough. He is way harder than Udex Gundyr, but he does have the same basic moveset. And he doesn't turn into a pus monster, but he has way more health, way more damage. He also has new abilities that allow him to combo into things. He can punch you and continue comboing. He can kick you and continue comboing. He can palm you in the face. He can do a stomp attack. There are so many things he can do, and it's very difficult to learn, and he just books it across the arena at you so fast. You never have time to drink, you never have time to breathe, so you just have to learn how to beat him without healing, if possible. You can still heal, technically, but it's just really hard, and he's really fast. But I still don't think he's one of the absolute best. But boy howdy, are these a step above most of the bosses in Dark Souls 1 and 2. I will say. Alright, next up, after doing that, you can go into Archdragon Peaks, which is quite a difficult place to go, but this boss is less of a boss and more of an arena battle. Like, you have to just traverse the arena and then jump on his head to kill him, and that's it. So it's really bland, but I have fought the boss as a sorcerer, just standing beneath him and shooting shooting casts of sorcery up at him, because he's weak to magic damage. It took about 30 minutes, but I did kill him that way, and it was still very boring. So, no matter how you slice it, this guy is not difficult and really boring. So I would put him down below this guy. Yeah. Actually, I would say he's the worst boss in the game. I really like his arena, and I really like his design as a wyvern, but it's not a boss. It's just not a boss. It's just a plunge attack. The end. An annoying dragon is flying around. Now jump down off of this cliff and press the attack button. It's super stupid. I think it's really silly. Like, it doesn't make any sense for him to be a boss or to have a health bar. But it's an option to kill him normally, I guess. Alright, so next up is Nameless King. Nameless King. Oh boy. Nameless King is S tier, but oh boy, where do I put him? I used to hate him. I used to think he was very unfair and very bad. He has two phases, a flying around on a dragon phase, where it can shoot lightning at you, the dragon can breathe fire at you, and he can do swooping attacks. But you have to kill the dragon first, and then the second phase is just one-on-one, mano-a-mano. He does lightning attacks in rings around him. He does single target lightning attacks that you just have to dodge out of the way from, as well as, like, a Gwyn, like, thrust attack where he just shoots himself at you. And then he does combos. And he has a 3-attack combo and a 5-attack combo, as well as just single stabs and swings, which are very difficult to see coming. But once you get them, it's very much Dancer of the Boreal Valley, where you just dodge, 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 attack, dodge, attack, dodge, 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 attack, dodge, attack, and it's very satisfying to beat him. I actually one-shot him using my Claymore build, and that was insane. Very insane, because he is so challenging. Super high damage. Very much an endgame boss, but optional as well, and secret area you get to with the dragon and Nameless King. Also, super cool lore. I wish there was more to be found of the lore, but he has some amazing hair. Gotta say that too. Can't do a tier list talking about bosses without talking about how cool Nameless King's hair is. The rest of his armor is basically just the Gwyn armor from Dark Souls 1 that's all bedraggled. But, yeah, very cool boss, very cool lore. Very cool arena. It's almost an infinite arena of smoke on the floor with some pillars. You cannot fall off of the edge, thank God. And you can't really tell what the edges are. I never really ran into the edges, so it was never really a problem. So that's great. That's great. I do wish you could actually see the boss arena, but it's kind of cool that you're just in this other smoky dimension while you do it. Yeah, those are my thoughts on Nameless King. I don't think any of the other bosses deserve to be an S from this point on. I don't think, but I do like some of them a lot, so let's go through them. So this is the Dragon... what's it called? Dragon Slayer armor? Yes, the Possessed Dragon Slayer armor. Much better than any of these bosses, but, again, nothing to write home about. He has less abilities than Udex Gundyr. He does high damage, but he definitely just... He takes so long to do anything. You can always see what he's about to do before he does it, and he gives you enough time to heal. The real issue is the bridge that you're on, you can easily jump off of it once he destroys the guardrails, which you don't really know he can do until he does. And then there are, like, destroyed, mutated moonlight butterflies. I would call them Dark Sun butterflies that are also attacking you in the second phase. And they're more dangerous than he is. I know some people have probably had issues with him, but I never really have. I've died maybe once or twice to him every time, but... or maybe not at all. I don't find him a very difficult boss fight, or a very memorable one. But I will say, the boss arena is cool looking as heck, and he's possessed by a Dark Moon or Dark Sun butterfly, which is a really strange concept that you don't really realize until you kill him and all the other butterflies fall out of the sky, revealing that he had the power, the life of the butterflies inside of him. And I don't know what that means, lore-wise, but it's really weird and dark and creepy and cool. I like him more than this guy, Aldrich of the Deep. Alright, next up is... who is this? This is a dragon. What is this thing? Anyone in the chat know what this thing is? There aren't that many dragons to speak of in this game, so I'll have to come back to that. I don't know who that is. Huh. Alright, next up, I think we have to go to... oh, I actually forgot. Before you get to Champion Gundyr, you have to fight this guy, who is another one of my favorite bosses, but I can't say that the boss fight itself is very compelling. He's very much a Bloodborne boss, where he runs around the arena in Phase 2 like a crazed demon beast. In the first phase, he just casts things at you, swivels his tail around a bunch, and does crystal attacks, much like Seath the Scaleless, which I think he's a worshipper of, or an apostle of Seath the Scaleless. Also, I think he does actually have some connections to Bloodborne, having a child that is invisible in his arms, as well as having these fungal protuberances out of his head, and blue skin, like the Thumerians in Bloodborne. So really cool lore, but he's very much a mystery. Very much a mystery indeed. I think I like him the best out of all the A-tier bosses. Yes, Consumed King Osiros. His voice actor is awesome, too. Ocelot! Ah, you ignorant slaves. Finally taken notice. But anyway. So we're getting into the DLC now, chat. We are getting into the DLC now. Although not quite, we have one of the final bosses. The Twin Princes of Lothric. And these guys are probably one of my most hated boss fights in the game. Very difficult, very challenging, but very few moves to choose from. But he can teleport, and he can teleport in the middle of an attack, so while the attack is being readied, you can roll at the correct time that the attack is coming, but then he teleports behind you, finishes the attack after you've rolled, and you die anyway. And he does insane damage, like 1-shot or 2-shot damage, and it's not fair at all. Although, spears one-shot him. He does very poorly against, specifically, pierce damage, or thrust damage, which is weird. So I don't like him at all. He's way too fast, he does way too much damage with any of his attacks. Can also be revived if in the second phase, if his twin is able to revive him. And that's no fun, having to do it all over again. He only gets revived to, what, 50% health though, which is a mercy. Alright. Next up is DLC stuff. I don't know who this is. I have no idea what this dragon is. Yeah, no idea. No idea. Looks like fan art, but I have no idea. Okay, who do we see first? Is this a boss? Oh yes it is, actually. In the painted world of Ariandel. Yeah. I guess you can fight him as the first boss. I don't think you generally would. But there he is. First boss of the DLC can be this guy. The Grave Warden Guardian of the painting alongside his pet giant wolf. I don't remember the names because they didn't have very specific names. A very weird boss that I don't think deserves to be among the likes of these, or A or S. It's kind of fun, but it's also kind of annoying to have an NPC attacking you with a knife at the same time as this giant Sith creature is attacking you as well. It's like an insane rabies-infused Sith. That's basically has the same moveset as Vort. So yeah, it feels very bad. Isn't that the twin dragons from the DLC? Twin dragon. Oh, you mean the demon? Oh, the two demons? It doesn't look like them at all, but I think you're right. I think you're right. Yeah, that must be it. Because they don't show up anywhere else. Interesting. Thank you, Amadeo. Huh. It doesn't look like them at all. The demon in pain and the demon from below. Yeah. We'll go with that. But yeah, we don't get to those two yet. Yeah, this one feels... The wolf feels very low effort. It's just like taking another asset from previous games and popping it in with the same AI as Boreal Valley Vort and then an NPC with a specific weapon. It's just really not very compelling. It's a really cool arena, for sure, but I didn't like the boss fight. It's really easy and unfulfilling. You did have to beat it in order to get access to the multiplayer arena, though, which was an interesting thing. So, that's kind of a, I guess, a skill floor. If you're going to go into the multiplayer, you have to beat this guy. Multiplayer is always stuck behind DLC in From Software games, even in Elden Ring. Alrighty then, continuing with the DLC, I do think that you have to defeat... Ooh. I don't remember the events. Oh, yes, of course. Lady Frieda and Father Ariandel. I think this has to be... Yeah, this has to be an S. This is an S. It requires so much from you But once you beat her once, the first 2 phases become easy. The 3rd phase has always given me trouble, though. First phase, she does frost attacks with her scythe and goes invisible like Priscilla, whom she is an heir of, I think. And, I mean, I love the fact that she's a nun. She's just a nun. Really cool design with a scythe. A nun with a scythe. I love that. Like, what the heck? Super unique. So then, in the 2nd phase, Father Ariandel gets out of his chair, or falls off of it, and uses his Lord Vessel to throw fire at you, while she continues to attack you from across the room with frost abilities. So that's rough, but then you defeat those 2, and then she gets possessed with the Dark Flame, and gets quite the upgrade. Super fast. I think she can she still do frost attacks? I don't know, but she has a lot of new Dark Flame attacks. AoE attacks, Cone of Damage attacks, and ranged, like, fire attacks, as well as really long combos, and really hard to foresee delayed swipes of her blade. Also, she does a grab that can one-shot you. So it's super hard, but very, very doable if you have a properly leveled character and a good weapon. You can also summon for it. You can summon Slave Knight Gale, and that makes it way easier from the 2nd phase onward. And I recommend doing that. Darn Catholics always carrying scythes. Those Catholics. Violent folk. I'm just kidding. So that's really, that used to be the pinnacle of Dark Souls difficulty for me before going into the rest of the DLC, which is way harder. Starting with, I think, the Demon from Below and the Demon in Pain, the twin demon princes. Which I don't think is an S boss, but it is very mechanical, very interesting, very, there's a lot. There's a lot with the Twin Demon Princes. I think that's who that is. It's really weird. Can't really see it, though, but I think that's what it is. So, there are 2 demons that can swap personalities. The one does poison damage and is cowardly. The other does fire damage and rushes you. And even while you're attacking them, they can switch what they can do. And their AI changes as well. What happened to the music? What happened to the music? Hello? Hello, music? Oh, that was the end of it? Oh my goodness. Wow. Alright. Sheesh. I've been doing this for a long time, haven't I? Let's get back to it then. Let's get this done. These always take way longer than I imagined them to. Alright, just a few more, and then we'll get into Hogwarts Legacy. I've been planning to do that for hours. Alright, and weeks. So, I think next, you don't have, well, you have to do this in order to get to Slave Knight Gale, but you don't have to do this to get to Midir. But it is recommended to do this before Midir, and this is the Judicator Argo and his team, and his gang squad. I don't like this boss fight at all, but it is challenging and it does present a unique challenge. So I'll at least put it here. Here. Yeah, it's a bunch of NPCs and a giant, and they all shoot holy damage at you, and the main guy shoots a bow and can also do Aldrich's arrow thing, which, interestingly enough, the spears of whatever you call it are the same ability that shows up in Elden Ring that the Scarlet Rot Knights use, which is fascinating to me. Very cool looking ability, and it can either be super difficult or super easy, depending. So it really is not a very, like, well-made well-structured fight. It is one of those bosses that was meant to be a multiplayer challenge where whoever is online at the time in the same area, who has joined the Covenant, can be, like, summoned in as the boss, as one of the bosses in this arena at this time when you fight them. A lot like the Demon Souls Demon of Blanket Head. I forget what he's called. I forget, what is his name? I don't know. He shows up in Latria. Anyway, you get the idea if you know Demon Souls. I don't think it's a very good fight, but it's enjoyable. It's enjoyable to beat, and it's really different depending on your playstyle and build. So, it's not bad. A lot of people are clowning on it, but sometimes you just get a really, really bad RNG and just get destroyed. Okay, so Dark Eater Midir is next, and he is definitely S tier. I don't like him very much, but he is S tier. His challenge, the challenge he presents, is massive. He takes so little damage. He has so much health. He does so much damage. He's so huge. His arena is so huge. And a lot of his AI is used for the Magma Worm and other dragons in Elden Ring, but none of those are as difficult as Dark Eater Midir, especially because you have a limited moveset in Dark Souls 3. I would say this is the most difficult boss in Dark Souls 3, out of a lot of difficult bosses. And it is satisfying to beat him, but I do think it is way too hard. So, he is in the last spot for me out of S bosses, but whenever a boss does require a lot out of you, it always feels satisfying. More so than a boss that doesn't require a lot out of you, but is still annoying. You know what I mean? And it's difficult to say, like, what the line between those two things is. Is it annoying or is it just challenging? Is it challenging or just annoying? And Dark Eater Midir is kind of the prototypical Malenia in this way. He's the most difficult boss, but you don't have to fight him. So, there is that. In that way, it's balanced. If he were a main game boss that you had to fight, I think it would be completely unfair. It's still unfair, honestly, but what else in Dark Souls is fair? That's a good question. Alright, the final boss of the DLC is definitely an S-scale boss. Not my favorite, but probably my second favorite boss of the game, Slave Knight Gale. Really fun to dodge through his attacks, really cool visuals, giant desert to fight in, like almost limitless desert that you never make full use of, but he moves like crazy. He has rage abilities, he has massive AoEs, he shoots lightning down from the sky in the second phase, he shoots skulls at you like Praetor Rykard, he has crossbows, like, it's such an insane boss, and it feels way more satisfying than the end boss of the game, and that's why he is the second place in S tier. The true main boss, however, is still S tier, and better than many bosses, in my opinion. But he's just in the middle of them. I like him more than Frida. I don't think he's more challenging than Frida, I think he's easier. But that's one reason why I like him. He's much more doable than most DLC bosses. And he is you. He is the player character from all the other previous Souls games past, and all the different builds you've done. Well, not all of them, but spears he uses, scimitars, longsword, great sword, ultra great sword, fire damage. He does fire damage all the time, let's just be honest. He uses Gwyn's abilities. The Gwyn theme is back in the second phase. The Plin Plin Plon comes back in the soundtrack, which is great, showing that the Gwyn soul is in him as well as yours. Everyone who is linked to the fire beforehand is in him, the soul of Cinder. So, yeah. Love this boss fight. It's always fun to do. It's definitely not the most difficult boss in the game, which is weird, but very satisfying. and a good end to the series as such. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, Charles has ended the Dark Souls 3 tier list. Let's go! Whoa. Charles' favorite Dark Souls 3 tier list. Put that in the description. Good